You're listening to the Yoga Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Land. This podcast brings you information and resources to enhance the therapeutic effects of your practice based on a deeper understanding of anatomy, physiology, and the integration of modern science and research with traditional practices and experiences. Join me and my co-hosts Tiffany Cruikshank and Katya Bach as we dive into all things yoga, research, and wellness.
Hi, Sandy. Welcome to the Yoga Medicine Podcast. Thank you so much for making time for us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rachel. It is a pleasure to spend some time with you. So thank you for having me.
I'm looking forward to this chat. I feel like I always start that way, going, "Oh, I'm excited for this day," but I always am, or I wouldn't be doing the episode. You've been teaching for a long time. You've been teaching for a couple of decades, and a lot of your work now is focused on helping other yoga teachers hone their skills. And I think in yoga medicine, we're the kind of teachers who are always about gaining more information, more techniques, doing the next training. You know, whenever there's a doubt in our mind, it's more training. And you're here today to talk about something that's a little different to that. That's not necessarily about more information. So why don't you kind of set the scene for us?
Well, it's interesting because yoga teachers, we love a good training, and me included. And that is definitely something that we need to be about. There's that balance, though, of the technical aspect of we should desire to be skillful and intelligent in those technical aspects that are the skill sets of teaching. But there's also sometimes I think we miss, or maybe it's a little more subtle, is that relational right side functioning really of our brain that is very integral to being what I would think successful and creating longevity as a yoga teacher. And so speaking from the experience of a couple of decades now and kind of exploring more of are there some missing pieces to this? Or maybe we've more heavily focused on the technical aspect, but if we're not mindful of that other relational aspect and that balance, then we could find ourselves not sustaining this pathway of service for a while. So yes, I'm very intrigued of the conversation and inspiring others to be intrigued about that curiosity of, well, how am I in that relational aspect of teaching?
Well, maybe we start by right at the beginning. Let's outline for people what are left brain types of skills, what are right brain types of skills. Let's help people kind of classify them in their own minds.
Absolutely. So when I think about left side, and it's interesting because we think about these tracks in our brain, and left side is a slower track, and right side actually is this fast track. So when I think about left side, that I've already mentioned is this technical aspect. So when I think about teaching yoga, obviously it's the study, it's the training, it's the gathering of the knowledge, it's the organization, it's very managerial, and a left-sided perspective would be more about seeking solutions for problems, which are great for yoga teachers because we are supporting others with a system and a practice that does provide wonderful solutions to those things. So then we think about the right side in those functioning is I've already mentioned, more relational aspect. Qualities of leadership more than managing come in. So there's qualities of character, of the confidence, really, I think, that shows up, that comes from, right, understanding and developing those left brain skills. But the right side starts to balance it with more of an intuitive approach and sensing and felt sense of the emotions, really, that come. And think about the practice of yoga. We are engaging with humans. So it is very relational. So there would certainly be an aspect of our development as teachers that's a side of our development that we really should spend some time as much in as the technical equipping of our skill set. So it's a fine balance. But I think sometimes if we're not careful, because of that desire to want to know more, because we do want to serve our students and we do want to be educated and equipped, and I certainly encourage everyone to do that. But there comes a time where there's the balanced aspect of, well, how am I showing up in this, and how am I relating to these individuals, and am I seeing them, right? Or am I seeing this collection of yoga poses, right,
Yes.
running around in the plan in my mind, which is very left oriented, organized, or is there's this leadership quality of coming in and engaging and motivating and inspiring the individuals to tap into that aspect, that what I believe. And my pursuit and study is kind of like, why do students even come back to class? And I think that's a key piece of that, is that relational aspect.
Yeah, I mean, you run teacher trainings. I've done a few teacher trainings, and I remember my own experience of being a new teacher and being so in the thinking of it. I've, set out a focal point for this class, and I've crafted a sequence that I think really brings it to light beautifully. And I'll say this cue at this time, and I'll ask this question at this time. And I'm so lost in trying to make sure that I create this perfect experience that, are there even people there? Have I even greeted people as they come in? Or am I so focused on my class plan, the lighting, the music? Did I put the props in the right places? What was I going to say to start with? How I got my quote ready? So lost in the thinking of it that I probably didn't even make eye contact or smile at any of the people arriving in the class. And I think we've all seen that in newer teachers, where the deliberate part of the process is still occupying such a huge part of your brain that there's no room around it for an exhalation and a softening of that grip of the plan to just let things develop as they will with this unique group of people at this unique moment in time.
Absolutely. And it certainly requires, as a new teacher, that you need to dedicate the time into that part of your teaching skill set.
Yeah.
And that's more kind of, I feel like, back end work, that we really do the work and the practice teaching and whatever that is, to put all that we're learning into application, because that's where I get a little nervous. And I've had to check myself as well, because I love a good training as well. But am I piling on information and accumulating for knowledge sake, but I'm not really applying it and absorbing it? Because that is when it definitely has the ability to transfer into the classes I lead. If I'm just keep piling on, but I never really give myself time to apply it or engage with others, sharing that and getting the feedback from them, then that can start to become overwhelming. And like you said, it keeps you in your thinking mind. So I think I love that you said that, because that's that left brain focus is that thinking, analyzing, where, the plan.
Yes.
Whereas the relational right side is more of kind of creating some spontaneous qualities of that intuitive side that allows you, and some listening, depending on personality, you have to give yourself permission, like, to let go of the plan.
Yeah.
Because most likely, and from my experience, that person I planned for didn't show up to class that day. So I need to be equipped as well, seeing the people coming into the class, and adapt the plan. Now that takes time, and it takes you as a new teacher, or anywhere you are along in your teaching pathway, to just be willing to keep showing up and kind of emptying yourself, I like to call it, of the plan, right? So be skillful, learn however you're, to thine own self be true, on how you organize and remember and recall. But also notice when, like you said, you're kind of floating around, that you don't even know if you really had a human encounter. And that's really what the practice, and I think the community aspect of the class is all about. Is certainly there's people who want to come in and they want to be on the back row, And I understand that, but within us, we're hardwired to be connected. So those people still want to be seen and a part of that. So if we as teachers are caught up in our head trying to recall, remember, and be so creative that we can't even remember our sequencing, then that's what we're going to present the practice, and we'll miss an opportunity to connect in a more, relational, like we're in this together kind of experience.
Yeah, I
but
think
certainly there's a season of teaching.
Yeah. You've said quite a few things there that I want to draw out to make sure that people really catch them. And the one that you added right at the end, I love, because if you're a new teacher listening to this and you've now got this extra weight on your shoulders of not only do I need to plan this fantastic class and remember it and handle the music and handle the lighting and get the props in the right place, but I've also got to be relaxed and casual about it. Like, no, there is a season. You'll be a new teacher for as long as you're a new teacher. Don't beat yourself up. Don't add extra weight to your shoulders. But as you get more seasoned, as you get more developed, I love that idea of, yes, do the work, do the preparation, do the planning, but take a moment before you start teaching or even before you arrive in the space that you're teaching in to just release your grip of the plan. Because you might have this group of people walk in and their energy's higher than you were expecting or lower than you were expecting, or you teach the first third and people's faces aren't showing what you were hoping that they'd show, or they're sort of finding things that you thought would be enjoyable, challenging. There's got to be room for you to change tack as you go and to respond to the actual living, breathing human beings that you did all this work for. It's not about you or the sequence, it's about an experience for the students. And so when you do have that space, when you do have that maturity in your teaching, soften your grip, let some things go. You've probably forgotten some of the beautiful stuff that you planned anyway. It's fine. They don't know. They don't care. They're just looking for a nice experience and then to go on their merry way out into their day.
Absolutely. And, I love your highlighting that, because I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And I do want to emphasize with this, yes, I'm a huge advocate for being skillful, knowing where you need to work on certain things. We all have strengths and weaknesses even in certain areas, but I call them next time moments. So are you going to forget a pose? Are you going to a hiccup in the class? Yes, it's going to happen. It happens to me still after 2
Lefts
decades.
and
I know
still
that's
my
going to
nemesis.
happen. Absolutely, yes. Or put this foot behind the head somewhere. Like, let's try that. And like, I don't know that, but we can try. So it's not like students are not looking for perfection. They're looking for presence and engagement. And I think if we're not careful, that's that left side production, get it done. And we're doing the thing that we miss the being aspect of being together, being human together. And yes, I'm going to be thoughtful. I want to be intelligent with my sequencing. I believe there's nothing random when it comes to sequencing. So we do want to study. And as movement-based teachers, we want to understand that, because when we really understand that for ourselves, there's an invisible confidence that comes in that students may never see, and they don't have to hear us give some type of anatomy lecture or anything like that, but we can come in exuding that, and it develops trust. And I believe that becomes these components of that relational aspect of building trust. And it's not based on me coming in to perform or provide some perfection in some delivery. Is for me to come in and be engaged and to support what I feel like is this bigger work that we're coming in together. And, I have, and teachers listening, and we've dedicated to this work and the study. But if we're not careful, we'll miss the people coming in and the beautiful interaction, that relational aspect that has that emotional quality. And I loved you mentioned, I kind of call it reading the energy of the room. if you're thought so much in left brain thinking mind and not in that feeling, felt experience in the room and the space, because like you said, there's a discernment there. You've got to create some space in your plan for discernment of who did show up, what energy is in here. I've been in classes before where I've felt like, hello,
Yeah.
is anybody in here? And it was an eerie feeling, but what it told me was, okay, you're going to have to step up a little more here. You've got to carry this. So I believe understanding that those things are going to happen because once again, it's relational. It's an energetic exchange that's happening. So if we're too left brain, to analytical, technical, we're not going to even notice that. And then what kind of encounter took place? And will that draw a student back to the practice, to your class? I don't know. It may still, but I think we could, if we are more aware of that and cultivate and develop that, then we create a balance for the whole experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because if we're looking for this technical perfection, we'll be replaced by AI. It's that simple. You could send a robot to Tiffany's next teacher training. They could come back and craft the absolute perfect sequence and deliver it, remembering every single thing. Timing is perfect. They never say foot when they mean ear, or they never say right when they say left. It would be perfect, but that's not what people are coming to a human for. And you mentioned doing the training, getting that left brain skill, and then living with it for a while, feeling it in your body, turning it over in your own practice, trying it out with students, getting feedback on it, and sharing the humanness of that technique or that new piece of information, as opposed to just the bare bones, the technical side of it. Really sharing your experience with it and what you've seen and students' experience with it makes it feel totally different to just repeating perfectly word for word what you learned at the training. And that requires real patience, doesn't it? That next time attitude that you were talking about. I can't do everything today, but that's okay. We can cover that bit next time. We can cover that bit the time after. Plenty of time. I've got my whole life. They've got their whole lives.
Absolutely. And, it's from my experience, it's been the ability for me to refine and to grow. And that's where, now in my season of teaching and supporting other teachers, I want to be a support of this understanding that it's an ongoing pursuit. It's not
I won't ever be done.
Arrive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be boring at that point if we knew it all. Certainly, I'm a little farther along, than when I began, thankfully, because I think we should see that in ourselves and in the teachers that we study with. And one of my primary teachers, too, has even said that, if you're not seeing some growth and refinement in me, and you're kind of stuck. So we should be in that ongoing study and pursuit, which is really kind of, this goes back and forth between the left and right brain. And I think, and we're, as yoga practitioners, very familiar with the kind of getting stuck, that terminology of being stuck. But we can get stuck in ruts, and we can be thinking, and we're along the path of accumulating, like, once again, that study and that knowledge. But if we're not shifting over into the application and, what is my personal experience with this? And I think that's another aspect that I would want to highlight, that as a teacher, I have my experience so that I can go in and speak from experience, not just from book knowledge, but that from that application and knowledge, but also with a careful discernment to not go in and project my experience on someone else, because ultimately my pursuit now is more, and this creation for students have their own autonomous experience, that I have guided and directed them into their discovery, rather than coming in once again to perform for me. That's not, and if we're not careful in how we convey and how we come in leading the class, it could turn into more of that managerial aspect, that left brain. We're managing a class. We're more consumed with is the music this, is that this, and all the stuff, which are great accents. But if we're consumed with that, we're going to miss that wonderful aspect, that relational right brain, balance. So it's kind of like this, be in this pursuit of balancing both sides, so we can like teach from a whole brain approach.
I love that. I really do. And you're describing lots of little experiences that bring up memories for me in teaching and practicing group classes. That the right brain side of things might be being present as people arrive, making eye contact or offering a greeting, or being available if there's something that people want to tell you quietly, making sure people are finding their way and have the props that they need and kind of settling in. That's part of it. And then also reading the energy of the room. Is it high? Is it low? Are they here? Are they present? Do I need to, adjust what I was doing in my warm up to help meet that energy and to guide it towards some kind of shared experience? I'm watching their faces. I'm watching their body language, and I'm leaving even room that the way that you were talking about guiding that really precise experience can feel left brain. Like, take your prop on this height and put it at exactly this height, and you will feel X, as opposed to try it here. If this is what you feel, you could go a little lower down. You try it a little further back. Do you need to pad it with your mat? How's your breathing? What do you notice? What comes up when even that leaving space for them to have their own human experience with the thing that I've played with? I've had mine.
Absolutely.
Mine is likely to be different. All of this stuff I can kind of see in group class experiences as really changing it from an almost robotic experience, which might be perfect, but not engaging and involving, to something that feels much more organic and human. What about, this is the longest question in podcasting history. What about one-on-one sessions? How does that differ, or even does it differ when it comes to working with people individually in yoga?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think there's ways that we can, in collective settings, kind of nuance the practice, and like you're saying, offer this collective of individuals to have their own fresh encounter in the same practice setting, which I think is just such a beautiful and amazing experience to have, that everyone is in it together, but having their own opportunity to create it to be what they wish to have. But also in regards to working one-on-one, I mean, certainly that gives you a little more engaging opportunity one-on-one as to gather a little more information, to understand the needs that they have. Because that's another thing I think we have to be careful, is that we gather all this knowledge and we think and assume we know what people need, and we know some things and we know the benefits, but are we listening to others? And then that requires us to develop within ourselves as teachers the ability to maybe not know everything, and they may come to you with something, and if you're working with someone one-on-one, it may be that it requires you to be vulnerable enough to investigate on your own, to bring back some information or some techniques, or something in the postures that would be more specific to them. But I certainly think we can use our language and how we communicate. You mentioned eye contact. Are we engaging? I find myself, because even being a teacher trainer too, and how we teach the foundation and the poses, and I find myself at times in classes even telling myself, lift your head up, because I'm looking, because I believe if we can get I say, when things are a little wackadoodle in the feet, right, we get them in the foundation and it works itself up. So I'm looking at feet a lot, and then I'll find myself, lift your head up, like, look at people. And it's not that I'm not trying to engage, I'm trying to be useful with the cues I'm giving. But I think that's a good one. Are we engaging, and then showing and being willing to show our humanness in it in a professional manner, and also in an energetic manner too, with some boundaries and things like that, because you said, being accessible. I do believe we should be accessible on the front end of classes and practices and on the back end.
Agreed.
And then we have to be discerning of, I don't know about you, but I've had some students, I think they would carry on with me through the rest of my day, if I had just let them go. So, you discern how much time you have to devote to that, but being accessible. I don't want to be this entity that's kind of up at the front or wherever it is that seems unapproachable. So I think that's part of that relational aspect. Or, are you approachable? And then are you, I love that Tiffany and the yoga medicine studies has helped support me in the years of understanding I'm an adjunct, towards somebody, and that unless it's in my credentials and my skill set medically, that I'm always, not trying to be all things to everyone, but to send people to the right places. So I think we have to constantly be mindful of that, of sending students with needs maybe that we aren't equipped yet to support, or that's not in our expertise or our level of credential to not take that on, because this is a practice that opens up and brings people a lot of healing and a lot of just wonderful benefits. And students will start to look to you as being the one that provided that. So that's a kind of a cautionary experience with that, and the relational aspect, because you are dealing with humans. So you've got to be, and that emotional aspect in the right side. So that's coming into your classroom, or that's coming into your interactions one-on-one. So you as a teacher have to be equipped and ready, so you're not caught off guard by that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that does often come up with one-on-one sessions more so than it does in classes, because, if you're seeing somebody one-on-one, there's an expectation that there's some unique situation of theirs that you're going to be able to provide some help with, which doesn't mean all help, but it's just a different relationship. Now, the reason I asked about one-on-ones was because that's when it really hit me in the face that I was lacking in right brain skills when I started working with people individually. And, I had my intake process. I had lots of questions to ask them. I was gathering plenty of information and then, tailoring what I was doing to what was coming up. And you do with a one-on-one student, much more so than with a class, have to hold your class plan, your sequence plan very, very loosely, because you might arrive with a whole list of things that you were going to do to help them with their hip pain or low back pain, and find that they're too sore to do any of them, or that they're really tired today, or that they've had a flare up in their pain, and that whole plan goes out the window. You do have to be a lot more adaptable. And so that was challenge number one, was being much more nimble on my feet. Challenge number two was exactly as you said, people wanting to share and engage so much that you can't get out the door. Like 25 minutes of a 1 hour session talking, and I'm there going, I'm not educated to talk. I'm not a counselor. I don't have correct responses. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. And it was good for me. It was a really interesting process of learning to just kind of listen and reflect back what I was hearing, and then, to eventually get things back on track for the reason they got me there. But it really hit me. This was not in my training. I didn't learn how to listen to somebody for 25 minutes, and I didn't really learn how to throw my whole class plan out and do something different.
Exactly. And then that's the challenge of teacher trainings. And I can replicate, and we can try to mock up certain situations, but it's really those real time, get out there and teach, because that's when you learn exponentially, is putting those things and have the space of knowing that it's not just about the plan and executing. It's about that component of the relational aspect. And I love, and what I'm hearing you say and offering that, sometimes I liken us to facilitators and space holders. And from like maybe a one-on-one situation, we find ourselves with this collection of this sequence. We really, this therapeutic sequence we wanted to work on. And what we found ourselves is maybe there was a pose or two, but we ended up being a kind of a space holder to listen or to just hold the space to allow them to be as they are. And that requires, it can be uncomfortable when, and you're getting used to that, and it can be challenging, but it's part of the whole process of teaching. And so I think if we want to be in this fullness and this wholeness of this experience of being a yoga teacher and serving and connecting others, then is it always going to be comfortable and go as no, it's not. And so then it becomes how we respond to that. And are we equipping ourselves to expect the unexpected? And then how are we going to react or respond to it? Because I believe we're teaching always, whether even in that front end of the class, the end of the class, the interactions on the way to the car in the parking lot, there's how we're being is teaching others. And so if we're not careful, we could be incongruent in how we are in leading the set of asana poses and the practice of yoga. And then we turn into something in this reactive, it could be very contradictory. So there's definitely, that's where I'm very encouraged, for myself and speaking to others, is to be mindful that we're really spending time on that aspect of our teaching skill set.
Yeah. I think some people come to it naturally better than others. It's definitely not my wheelhouse. People, conversations, knowing how people feel, knowing the correct response is definitely not my wheelhouse, but it's something that I've been willing to be a learner of and to get better at. And really that's all that can be expected of us. And you're so right that if we're going to a group class and saying at the beginning, as I always do, I have a sequence planned, but I didn't plan it with any knowledge of what's going on in your life. So there's probably going to be parts of it that won't suit you. You might sit them out and take a break. You might substitute something you like better. You might go more slowly or move more quickly. It's your practice. You're in charge. So check in and see how you feel. For me to say that every time I teach a group class and then arrive at a one-on-one session and be like, but we've got to do my plan. It'll be so good for your hip pain. That's not congruent, is it? I'm not walking the talk. And so I really have to live that experience of, that's not what you need today. Great. What do you need today? What would feel good for you today? Are we going to do some restorative poses? Will we do some breath work? Do you want to talk? What do you need from today? And then I'm exactly the same teacher in both of those scenarios. And you're so right, teaching people that the practice of yoga is about listening, paying attention, and responding accordingly. It's not about going through the motions.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a learning process. And, what we've already mentioned that, early on, you have to spend time in that probably more heavily left side. Some people are more, come in with this sense of the right side, emotional, relational, already a little bit more developed. And so that's not quite as terrifying of that development of that aspect. But I think what I've seen in my progression of, just like I said, trying to understand, what is that, what is this, kind of being in this, investigative part for myself of really understanding, it's that balance between, I think students want us to be skillful and they want to trust us, right? They want us to have a plan. But it's when we're rigid and attached to the plan and we stop seeing them, that's when we create create this distraction, or I liken it, we get in the way. And so it becomes, how do I become a skillful teacher, an effective facilitator and space holder, that I, in essence, in the experience, fade into the background. I'm guiding, I'm giving directive, I'm being clear. I'm constant. I'm a talker, and I'm all these things. So I'm trying to edit myself always and trying to discern, the cues I'm giving. if I'm not seeing what I think I'm guiding, then it's on me to clean up my language, not thinking that what are they doing? I'm like, like they're supposed to be doing what I said. No, somewhere in my communication is not coming across. So being willing to refine that and being okay with that the language sometimes gets clunky. And so that's a way I think of our language, but understanding it's not so much the precision and the right angle degree. And like you mentioned, getting so rigid and specific with that we miss the investigative, noticing, felt experience of the practice that we really want to usher them forward into, that they have this encounter, because that's what's going to draw them back than all the rigidity of it, because that might last for a season or so, but I think that kind of wanes and we go to the next thing of movement. Whereas yoga and this experience, when we're guided in a way that we tap into that space within ourselves, then that I believe is what draws us. I know from my experience, like what draws me back. And that's, those experiences, those teachers that have held that space for me and have guided with the language that's inviting. Like you said, we go and I've got a plan, but I'm not, so rigid that you have to execute my plan today. But like you said, it's inviting language. It's encouraging, it's noticing, it's not, you're here to perform for me. That's really when I think we find that nice kind of in the groove balance of the left and right side functioning of teaching and that skill set. So it's definitely, and then being true to yourself. Like we've mentioned.
I think you've gotten to the crux of it, and I'm glad you brought it back from mentioning it earlier. What brings people back? What brings students back to the same class week after week? What brings a one-on-one student back to work with you again and again and again? It's the relationship side of it. It's the feeling of being part of something that they enjoy, something that's bigger than themselves. It's not just about you as a teacher, especially in group classes. It's the experience that they're having with all of the other students. And when you do kind of fade into the background and you're not the star, but their experience is the star, that's what they're there for. It's actually a really good thing for you as a teacher. It takes a lot of the pressure off. You're not there to perform. You're not there to entertain. You don't have to. It's just you're pointing out, you're suggesting, you're offering, you're guiding, and then it's not all on you. It takes so much of the weight off your shoulders.
It really is. It's refreshing. I think there's a freedom felt in that as a teacher. And then when you tap into that, you have a sense of there's really no other way I want to go in teaching or being as a teacher than in that capacity. So that's going to be like my go-to, kind of creating that as I go in. How can I release or attachments? Because I think if we're not careful, there's a subtlety that we are creating attachments of students thinking that unless this, and this is in the practice, then it's not successful or it's not going to be, and that's external attachments. So the last thing I would hope that we would want as teachers is not to have them attaching to us, but having them, creating that, like you said, and I said, fading back so that they can come in past really us into that experience, that really is what is going to draw them back to their yoga mat. And whether it's in our class or not, and that's kind of my mission and goal as a teacher, like I'm going to equip and give you as much as I can give you in the time that you practice with me. But I want you to be equipped that wherever you are, and hopefully you are encouraged in your home or when you're traveling or wherever you are, that you're seeking. I love when students would come back and say, oh, I went traveling, and they went and explored and found a space to practice, or they practice in their hotel room or whatever. Then I feel like, okay, that's where for me, I wanted to equip you to to move in that direction for yourself, for your practice, right? I want you to practice with me, and I want to be skillful, and I want you to be engaged with you for you come, but not so that you attach to me, but that you create that experience, because that to me becomes sustainable. It creates longevity. And my desire is to be doing this for as long as I can be doing it, as a practitioner, and I want to equip others to have those same experiences and education and trusting of themselves that they can continue to do that and practice.
I think that's really important for teachers to hear, because I think it's something a lot of us come to over time, but it's really difficult in those first few years not to be comparative and competitive. That class is so busy. My class is so quiet. She used to come to my class. Now she goes to that person's class. Oh, they said so-and-so's class was harder, or they loved so-and-so's class, and this one was a bit slow for them. It is really difficult, I think, especially in the early years, not to be attached to which people are coming and are they coming back, and do they like me, as opposed to just, I'm a conduit between them and the experience of yoga, the thing that I'm so passionate about, that I've done all of this training and invested all of this time and energy and attention and money. I'm just a conduit for these people to that experience, their version of it, not my version of it. And if they don't need me to continue to be the link, great.
Absolutely.
And it does require a really long-term view.
It does. And I love that you tapped into that, because that is a huge piece of advice that I give trainees that I work with, or even other teachers, is that the moments when I came to the realization that, you know what, I'm not going to be everyone's teacher, and that's okay. And when I came to that okayness, it helped me to shift into what we just talked about, that freedom of stepping into the classroom. And I love you use the word conduit, because we are a conduit. And that's kind of the evaluation we should be considering, is how clear is our conduit, for ourselves. Is there stuff we need to work on? Are we getting in the way of this process? But the understanding and okayness that I'm not supposed to be everyone's teacher, and that is okay.
I am not yoga. I am not the practice of yoga. Yeah.
And that, I love that, right? We are not the teachings. Right? We are not that. So we are sharing, and we are giving from our experience of that, and that will resonate with some. And for others, they will seek out and find, and that's great. I just hope you go find another that's my desire. Yeah. But the moment I came to that, and that's what I would encourage anyone listening who's teaching, that's where the freedom starts to come from, is in that okayness. Because here's the other thing, and I always inspire and want to encourage new teachers in particular, that there are a lot of yoga teachers, yes, but there's only one of you. And no one can teach yoga like you can. Right. So
especially if you're teaching as
yoga.
yourself. Yeah, exactly. Especially as you're teaching as yourself, and not just parroting what it says in your textbook or what your teacher said. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's another ownership component of the process of teaching and seizing, right? Be new, but then you shift into, okay, now it's time for me to take ownership of how I am going to be as a teacher, and how I'm going to deliver. Yeah.
I think that's, I think so too. And I had the exact same experience that you did. Of, it sounds like a difficult thing to do, to let go of that graspingness and wanting everyone to be your student and wanting to be everyone's teacher. But it's actually such a freeing thing, because it means you're no longer worried about how many people came. Is that person still coming to my class? Do they like the other person's class better? Why haven't I seen so-and-so? It lets all of that stuff go, and it just frees you to show up for whoever's there on the day, and teach what you can to them, offer little nugget that you can to them on this day, trusting that over the long term, they'll get what they need, whether it's from you or from somebody or somewhere else. And it's a very freeing thing.
It is. And like I said, there's really knowing both sides of that, having experienced the wondering and the class pressure and the numbers and the this and all that. And I think that's natural. I think
I think
that's
so
just part
too.
of the process, right? But understanding it is, but then knowing there's another side of that. And then knowing that that's where I want to be and that's where I want to reside in that space. And that will intuitively and it'll show up, and that'll be in your being of how you show up, which is going to aid in this engagement piece of the relational right side aspect of emotionally engaging and motivating and like you mentioned earlier, creating for other individuals a sense of identity and belonging and connectedness to something and whatever that is. And they may can verbalize it, we may not, but we are there as a conduit to support them in finding their that for them. So that's that aspect that helps kind of segue that bridge over, is just being okay with, you be you teaching. And that's a beautiful gift to give your community, is to do that.
So here's the challenge, though, because a lot of the things that you've been talking about, you've said, now notice, sit with, see if you can explore. These are not the kinds of skills that are easy to convey in a teacher training. We can't really teach someone how to be present, how to let go of attachment, how to be a conduit to the teachings and not to try to be the teachings. This is not the sort of stuff you can do a 5-step plan for in the textbook. So how do we learn these skills?
I think we have to just teach as brand new teachers coming out, and I'm sure you've encountered it before. There's some that come to trainings, and it's always interesting because they, with no desire to teach.
Yeah.
But yet I'm kind of like, it's called a teacher training, so you're going to teach.
You're going to have to teach at least here in the training.
Absolutely. And it's a beautiful, we all know, we've heard, right, when one teaches to learn, right? So you learn exponentially trying to figure out how to teach someone else something.
For sure.
So I would just say anyone that's doing that work, been through that, to not, in whatever capacity it looks like, you teach. Be in the real time, put yourself out there, trust yourself that you do know enough, right? After your training, you know enough, and go put it into action. Don't pile on some more information. Give yourself time to absorb, and you'll absorb a lot by the application. Like, do the thing, like teach the practice to someone, collect some people, take on a class, whatever it is, teach. And like you said, we can't teach you what's going to take place in real time. In the trainings I lead, I try to create a component, and I know and believe that yoga medicine does too, where we actually are organizing some classes or one-on-one work with individuals and maybe case studying about it and those kind of things, because that is where we are really putting the application into place and where we'll learn how to figure out how we're going to be in those settings. So it is tough. And I wish I could give some kind of magical answer, some left brain technical outline, right? Step by step of that. I would say have your plan, right? Have your structure, but also create the sense of balance of spontaneity in it. So be skillful with structure, but know that, figure out how you're going to adapt. And there are, certain skill sets you can develop of doing something differently, or, create some collection of mini sequences that help you kind of on the fly know how to adjust and adapt something and those kind of things. And I think more importantly, Rachel, it just be vulnerable and put yourself out there, but trust, right? The big picture of why you're doing this. Always come back to the why. Yes. Right? Why am I wanting to do this? Why is this? And I think, and for me, and I can only speak from my experience, the why is bigger than me. And it's service and connecting, and that aligns whatever I'm doing with as a yoga teacher. And so I always, in the frustrations, in the whatevers, that we can go through, because it'll happen. you align back to like, why are you doing this? Like, what's the purest intention of, is it about the love of the yoga poses? I love the yoga poses, don't get me wrong, but like, what do they translate and mean?
Yeah.
What are they helping to support others in doing? And really understanding that, and understanding the intelligence of them from the standpoint of the impact of what they can benefit someone else. So I'd say get out there, do the work, be in it, be in the clunkiness, know it's going to happen. Make those next time mental markers, and next time refine yourself and be ready, to be in that. But you just got to put yourself out there, I think, is the best way to learn.
That is the best advice. It really is. People will want, as I would want, a textbook or a course that I can do or a checklist I can follow, but that's just not how it works. You've hit the nail on the head. You've got to be in the experience, just like we've had to be in the experience of yoga. It's not the performance of yoga, it's the practice of yoga. You really have to immerse yourself in the experience of doing some things well and going, great, that seems to work, doing some things badly or being surprised or taken aback and going, well, next time I need to have a plan of attack for that, and gathering the wealth of that experience along the way. And absolutely. I love that you brought it back to intention, because even if you are a really asana focused teacher and you live for handstands, say, you don't get out of bed in the morning because of your love of handstands. It's because you want to empower people to challenge themselves, to take flight, or to push past boundaries of fear and to realize that they can do harder things than they thought that they can do. You're not really excited about the handstand. You're excited about what it gives to the people, aren't you?
Absolutely.
And that requires
that vehicle, right? That vehicle of handstand. Like, where's that going to take these people today, and that intention of how then am I going to go in and guide and be that tour guide on that experience to facilitate and hold a space for people in a trusting way. Because when you go in skillfully like that and you have your plan, but you're not so rigid with it, people have a tendency, they trust, and they may find themselves experiencing or exploring something that they might have been hesitant, but they trust you because you're holding that space so well for them that they want to go where you're leading them. And so that's that leadership again, which is that very right side, focus, rather than going in and managing a room, right? You're going in and leading, equipping, and like you said, empowering others to do.
You just gave me the visual of my worst nightmare of it, like a travel tour guide with, they're holding a sign or an umbrella going, and we're walking and we're walking and that's not the kind of teacher that I think any of us want to be. And we're stepping the right foot forward and we're putting the back heel down and now we're standing up, and none of us want to be that. We want to facilitate inquiry and exploration and curiosity, and that spaciousness requires a slightly different type of leadership to following the sign or the umbrella.
Right. Engagement, not like, when is this going to be over?
Exactly. How much longer do we get back to the bus? Yeah, exactly.
Yes. That's a good one. And if I've used that, it's kind of like, you can get off this tour anytime.
Yeah.
If you desire, like you said earlier, a different expression or different pose, or totally not, sit here and hold the space, whatever it is that you need. And then giving students empowered permission, that's what this practice is about. And it's not another check the box, or you come in to do something for me as the teacher.
Right.
No, this is bigger than that. But I love that. That's funny because we've had those experiences.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. My goodness. And I've probably guided some of those experiences too when I'm feeling overwhelmed. So
I'm sure that we all have.
So if we're kind of wrapping up to takeaways for people, first and foremost, this podcast is not saying throw the textbooks out, never do another training. It is definitely be skillful, definitely educate yourself, but give that education room to live within you as a human, for you to have your experience of it, for you to guide other people through their own unique experience of it and to start to develop wisdom around the textbook knowledge.
Absolutely.
And you also said several times to be in the season. If you're new, if you're a beginner teacher, be a beginner teacher. Don't expect yourself to be perfect and fluent and free. But know that eventually the left brain side of it, the remembering the sequence and remembering the cues, that will become less important, that it will become more in your bones, and you can soften your grip on that. Be looking for that to happen by taking lots of opportunities to teach, to get more experience and more familiar.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the other big part of it was being with people when you're with them, connecting.
Yeah, right. I mean, and that we all know when we've been with people and it's like, hello, are you there? Are you with me? Like they're there, but they're not there. And
are you thinking about what you're having for dinner after this?
Absolutely. And evaluate as a teacher. Are you going in and are you caught up in your mind and headspace about all those, wonderful things that you're wanting to offer and share, but yet in that wonderfulness of you being caught up in your mind, you've missed an opportunity to connect and have an encounter with someone. Yeah. And so understand when the extras become distractions. Yes. And then, regarding those trainings, certainly, yes, be in study, but understand too, I think intention goes behind that as well. What's your intention for this added knowledge? Is it because you feel like you're trying to keep up with another teacher, or you're trying to, know the latest, greatest, and that kind of thing? Are you trying to entertain students? Are you really trying to equip them? So, yeah, for sure. I think all of those are great points for us all to be an ongoing discernment of as we continue to grow as teachers.
Yeah, I love that. And coming back as you did to finish the conversation so beautifully with keep coming back to your why, keep coming back to that big picture of what inspired you to start this pretty difficult journey in the first place. What inspires you to keep going to the next training or keep showing up to teach the next class or to keep showing up on your own mat, your own practice. It's not going to be for love of handstand. It's not going to be the 5-point checklist for hip pain. It'll be something to do with improving the experience of human beings, because that's what drives us all when we really boil down to it, isn't it?
Absolutely, isn't it? It's when you get down to it, it's this emotional human experience we call life, and this beautiful opportunity that we have to do it collectively together, not to be on our own on an island doing it, but how do we support each other along the way? Yeah, for sure.
That's lovely. Is there anything else that you want to leave people with?
Well, I've talked a lot about planning and left side, and it's interesting. I just took a trip and was out in the northern part of Montana, and on that trip, and I think I was in an airport actually, and having a nice meal. I had a fortune cookie, and in the fortune cookie it said, "It's not the plan that's important; it's the planning." So it's like, I'm going to have to do some, I'm going to do some exploring of that. But I was thinking about it, we can get attached to the plan and certainly be in an aspect of planning as a yoga teacher on that back end and do whatever you need to do to understand how you can plan and be as effective as you can be going in and in a way that sets you up, that you're not attached to the plan when you show up in that classroom and you're able to really engage. So that kind of stuck out to me. I thought, I guess I saw that for a reason. So
I mean, that is such a beautiful way of explaining everything that we've been trying to communicate today is, yes, have a plan, but it's not about the plan. It's about everything that you learned and gained through the process of planning, so that when the moment comes for class or for the session, you're there and you're ready. And there's space for different things to occur.
That's be ready to hold that space.
Well, I mean, you talk about a lot of concepts like this and related to this in your own podcast, Beyond Yoga Teacher Training. So I would definitely send people there if this conversation is something you want to continue. Where else would you send people who'd like to know more about you and what you do?
People can connect with me through my website, sandyraper.com. I have many resources, the podcast, a YouTube channel. Probably get in touch with me, get on my email list, because I send out a lot of little extra tidbits to those who jump on that list, and some things to support people, even if they're contemplating yoga teacher training, and those ones that are in that process, new teachers, seasoned teachers, and mentorship opportunities. But so probably my website would be the great place to land. And from there, you can connect to all those other resources as well.
Brilliant. We'll link to those in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time today, Sandy. I love this conversation, and I think the listeners will too.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Yoga Medicine. If you liked the show, be sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you got something out of this episode, please spread the word and share it with a friend. You can find more information, articles, trainings, and classes at yogamedicine.com. Check us out on social media as Yoga Medicine, or you can email us at info@yogamedicine.com. Thank you for being part of our Yoga Medicine community.
The content of this podcast is not medical advice and is not meant to replace medical care. Please consult your healthcare provider to determine what is best for your unique healthcare needs.